We started the next lesson with a quick revision about what we had learnt previously, and we moved on to subcultural theories of crime and deviance. You need to know about how subcultural theorists explain criminal and deviant acts. You need to be able to use examples and explain how subcultural theory can impact criminal and deviant acts, and evaluate them, looking at strengths and limitations, considering other perspectives to illustrate these evaluative points. We started off by looking at the status that different people have in society, how they feel about their status and how they might react, considering the little boy in the bottom right, for example, doesn't have as much status as the man who we assume is his father. He might react at the time in a scared way. He might then go on to school and be aggressive to other people, maybe grow up in an aggressive way, because that's how he's seen issues being dealt with in his family, and so therefore reacts to his status through showing his behaviour in a way that may be seen as deviant or even criminal. So we started off linking this into status frustration and Cohen's ideas that those who feel personal failure, don't feel respected, may feel inadequate, might not have a job, may not have any material assets, may lead the individual to commit criminal and deviant acts. You might feel frustrated, you might go off and steal something or do something that's seen to be as unacceptable, and it's a solution because it might make you feel relieved of your frustration of being an inferior person in our society. So Cohen agrees with Merton and says there's a gap between what you want to achieve and a legitimate way of achieving it. So through the lack of legitimate ways of achieving status, people may form delinquent subcultures. They might start committing criminal and antisocial acts to get status. So within a subculture, so a small group of people who have their own norms and values, delinquency may be seen as an acceptable thing, and status is achieved through the creativity or participation in antisocial things, deviant behaviour, and also criminal behaviours too. And is a collective response. So again, this is a functionalist idea that people collect in groups who are all inferior, or who may be inferior for different reasons, so perform collective deviance. They have their own social solidarity within that subculture where they've been rejected from the majority culture, where they're seeking status. They can't achieve status other ways. So within their subculture, delinquency and criminality are the new norms and values, and they're shared within that subculture. And it explains why non-utilitarian crime is committed, so where graffiti or physical harm may be the criminal act, there's no material gain from those things. And Cohen successfully explains where Merton was unable to, why people commit acts that don't give them financial or material gain. They simply give them status. Other people look at them and say that they might be physically powerful or emotionally powerful, or they've gained something that may give them some kind of status. So putting their graffiti tag on across a bridge, other people see that and see that they've achieved that criminal act, and they may gain status from it. So things that might cause it to happen could be lack of education, poor family socialisation, lack of belief in religion. And the criminal and deviant acts can be utilitarian, so they can generate material goods, or they can be non-utilitarian, again, things like graffiti and harm to another person, so physical acts too. And there are strengths and weaknesses to this theory. We talked about how it's good because it explains collective deviance, so why it might not just be one individual committing a criminal or deviant act, it's a group. It doesn't consider why it's a working class groups that are deviant, although it can be argued that Cohen talks about lack of status, and working class groups can experience a lack of status. However, Marxists would question why not all working class people are deviant. Why is it that not every single working class person commits criminal and deviant acts and forms these delinquent subcultures. It also doesn't consider deviancy and crime among women, so there's nothing specifically that explains why women do and do not commit crime or form these subcultures, so feminists would question where women stand in this theory. A supporting argument from a functionalist perspective is that it explains why there's the people committing non-utilitarian crime, the idea that the thrill of the act is a motivation for criminal and deviant acts, where 18% of crime is vandalism. So again, it's non-utilitarian crime. People aren't getting financial or material gain, but they may be doing it for status. And Box, who argues that crime is committed due to the resentment of middle-class labelling, so where labelling may happen in education, in societies, in families, in religion, in media, and so on. These delinquent subcultures reject the middle-class values and find status elsewhere, and this is more of a Marxist perspective. We then looked at Cloward and Olin's opportunity structures. So we see criminal and deviant acts where there is a lack of legitimate opportunity structures such as education, and there's a lack of opportunities for people to achieve their status and societal goals through legitimate means, and where there are lots of illegitimate opportunities, so where there are structures in place where people are able to access criminal ways of gain, whether that be through status or material goods, there is a lack of legitimate opportunity and a great availability of illegitimate opportunity. The illegitimate opportunity are the criminal and deviant actions that take place as a result. So where someone might fail in education, they may live on an estate where there's a great deal of crime taking place. So rather than achieving legitimately through academia, they find illegitimate opportunities and achieve that way instead. So we see 3 types of subculture forming: the criminal, the conflict, and retreatist. So within Cloward and Olin's ideas, the criminal subculture is one that's very organised. There's great social cohesion, there's status, there's social mobility. So like mafia, they have role models, hierarchies, regular careers as criminals. There's strong norms and values that deviate from the majority in society, but within this subculture, they're very strongly held, and we call this an illegitimate opportunity subculture. The conflict subculture that Cloward and Olin said form is a disorganised one where there's lots of turnover. We see gang warfare, we might see turf wars. There are fewer illegitimate opportunities here to succeed and to gain status. So we see frustration, and we see that vented through violent acts rather than a secure criminal hierarchy with its clear norms and values. A lack of leadership can be a result of this. This is known as weak illegitimate opportunity structure. And then we have the retreatists, who have failed to succeed legitimately or illegitimately, seen as double failures, but there's lack of cohesion or aspiration for these people. We see more of an individualist behaviour where people may withdraw from society and be involved in drug culture, usually taking drugs as opposed to dealing with them. And this is where their illegitimate and legitimate opportunity structures have failed, so we see this retreatist subculture forming. Again, strengths and weaknesses of these theories we discussed. We argued that Cloward and Olin have seen that working class deviancy is not always focusing on material gain. It can be, again, linked to that idea of status frustration, but we see that behaviours might be so that individuals can embed themselves in criminal gangs or taking illegitimate opportunities. An interpretivist would say that you can't categorise all of society, so you can't look at all the criminals and say, well, they all belong to one of those particular groups. Likewise, Windlow's idea that there might be an overlap between the subcultures, so you might see some retreativists who are taking drugs and withdrawing from society, actually successful in dealing drugs too. So again, if we take an interpretivist stance, we can see that not everyone can be categorised successfully. Again, the feminist question, women's behaviours, why there is less criminal and deviant activity from them, according to the statistics, and this doesn't explain it. And then but Cloud and Olin have been commended for looking at the range of delinquent subcultures. We see that people are part of different subcultures, and it explains how those differ. We then looked at the last two. Miller talks about crime and deviance due to working class subcultures being created as a result of coping with focal concerns. The idea that fate, our lives are set out for us and we don't have control over them, versus autonomy, where we do have control and we are able to create our own futures. There's like a contrast between those, a discrepancy that can cause deviant and criminal behaviour. People's excitement and smartness, ability to kind of achieve through legitimate means. Excitement, a way of venting that, particularly in a modern society where lots of things are controlled. Trouble, facing trouble, creating trouble, and toughness, being physically able to cope with the situation that's presented to the individual. And using toughness as a way of showing that they have status. So Miller kind of comes from more of a conflict approach where working class subcultures may form because of these statuses that people have as a result of the focal concerns of fate, autonomy, excitement, smartness, trouble and toughness. And then the last one that we looked at was Matza, where criminal subcultures are formed through shared subterranean values, so sort of underground black market values, linked in with Miller the idea of toughness and excitement being presented by individuals. Criminals are often feeling guilty or shame, so they tie in with the social norms and values of the collective consciousness of society, but they show guilt and shame as a result of their criminal and deviant acts, which show that they have a consensus with the majority. However, they continue to perform these acts through sharing subterranean values because of the excitement and the toughness that they want to show. So we might consider things like fight clubs to be part of this subculture. But neutralization techniques are used to justify the acts. So people kind of dip in and dip out of these subcultures. They don't form part of this and follow it all the time. However, with the techniques of neutralization, we see people denying that they're responsible. It's not their fault, they got with the wrong crowd. No one got hurt, it was just for fun. The victim was a criminal, so they deserved it. The police are just as bad, they kind of label us and create and push us into crime. Or criminal behaviour is a means to an end, it's a political action. If we don't do this, then nothing will change. And we discussed how lots of people actually do find techniques of neutralisation to explain why they may deviate from the norm. So we talked about how some such subcultural theories have greater strengths than others, and we finished the lesson there.